Howdy y'all, this is Porty 1119 with Headframe Hunters. We're here in the Steeple Rock district of Grant County, New Mexico at the East Camp Mine. This was primarily a gold and silver mine. Worked on and off from about the turn of the 20th century through to 1942, then again in the 1970s, 1980s. That's the headframe, hoist house. The huge pile of dry stack tailings down here, along with the mill foundations.
That had to have been incredibly dusty when it was being put down.
Yeah. If they weren't running dust suppression, I agree. Tailings pond in the valley. There's a couple more structures across the valley that I think were probably part of the camp. This is inside the East Camp Mine's hoist house. That's where the cable went out. Then racks for parts. What's really neat is how thick the foundations were poured for this hoist house. It has to be easily 2 or 3 feet above ground, and then everything below. So the hoist would have been mounted right in here. Looking back out at that tailings dam. So this is a McDowell shaft. Used to have been a 3-compartment vertical shaft. Concrete collar. This likely would have been the service compartment and the hoisting compartment. Skip's still there. And the manway. The manway doesn't look to be in particularly good shape, which isn't too surprising. The ladders ain't in great shape either. These tanks up here, as well as these plant foundations over here, are reported to have been part of a cyanide extraction plant that was intended to both process ore from underground as well as reprocess old tailings. Cyanide processing in New Mexico is legally challenging now. It requires a higher class of mine permit, no matter how much surface disturbance is involved in the operation, because of the perceived hazards, real or perceived, of cyanide processing. So we're down here at the lower portal of the East Camp Mine. Got a fallen down storeroom, loadout trussel, and then portal here. Gonna go ahead and get my underground gear and head on in. We passed by, I believe, 2 collapsed declines that were driven about 30-40 years ago here by I think they were allergic to shotcrete, so they all fell in. We're now proceeding down this drift at the East Camp. So the going theory, which I do agree with, is that this was originally run with track and then converted to run rubber tire, because this would fit a 2-yard LHD pretty easily.
We got a raise going from the surface right here.
So we got a raise coming from the surface. Here's what that ladder was from. That would account for the ventilation.
Look at that.
we experienced.
There we go. There's that amethyst.
Got a junction up here. There's the drive to the left. They did hit a vein, and looks like they'd begun to stope it out. Never really followed through. This was, without a doubt, run with trackless equipment. There's even ruts on either side. Had old winds going down that way. I don't think I'm quite crazy enough to attempt that. Got a strap on the top. Now it starts to get a little interesting. It's an incline shaft that runs down, looks like to water. Yep, that's definitely water. About 15 feet below grade. Powder magazine here. That halfway looks like a wooden grizzly. I would go quite a bit more steep before I attempted to use that as an ore pass. You know, this is, if you've noticed these multiple raises in succession, I think this was probably the haulage level. So we're then inside the ore zone that was being exploited by those upper declines I mentioned. This continues for quite a ways. Gonna climb up, take a look there. So I'm right up at the base of the stope. Got visible veins in the ribs here I was saying this stope is likely too narrow, or is too narrow to work with trackless equipment. So this could have been a manual shrinkage stope.
Did it crush into you?
They have in the past, so.
But not quite sure. We're gonna keep on going down that haulage drift.
Dr. Worsey's been bit by
A lot of pine cones here. I think it might mean this stope continues to the surface in a roundabout fashion. Got a raise here running up into the stope. So I'm getting the sense that we're parallel to the vein and a little bit below it where they would have driven these muck bays off of. Got a lot of timbering up ahead. Looks like it might terminate there. So that definitely collapses the real bad fall of ground. And then this will give you a pretty good perspective of that stope. Up at the top, that could be 70 feet. So with all this timbering, if I had to guess, this was probably the manway up into those stopes. So it was shrinkage stoping and then rubber tired haulage, if I were to guess. I just ducked off into a brief drive here that ran parallel to the vein, or on the vein, and I wanted to see what was going down there. So this opens up into a flooded shrinkage stope. Got one stole left. Most everything is falling down into the water, which is about 15 to 20 feet below where I'm standing, sort of like in that winds. If I were to guess, that winds or that manway was probably used to access this stope. Initially we were thinking this was sub-level open stoping, then once we got into the stopes, realized the vein was too narrow to have facilitated it, so it was all manually shrinkage stoped with jack legs or stopers. So I think we partially figured out the mystery of how that shaft was mucked out. So this is what we thought was a bit of bacon strip strapping, was actually for the back cable on a slusher. And we got the eye bolt here for that slusher, and then it would have been mounted on this timbering. So that would have then, the slusher cable would have run through there. I'm thinking maybe drop to an ore pass in a flooded lower level. That would have either been accessed by a shaft or a decline. The guy who headed this up was real fond of declines. That makes a lot more sense than a timbered grizzly. I think that's going to be the answer to that mystery.